Please pray with me. May these words that I speak be grounded in my soul, encouraged by the God presence in me. And may these words that you hear be captured by your soul, enlivened by the God presence in you. Amen. The heart of God. I find myself wondering what is, or perhaps where is, the heart of God. It seems to me that the idea of the heart of God is easy to visualize if our understanding of God is as a being, some kind of a being out there somewhere. Making God in our likeness means that we could also then imagine a human-type heart in that being as well. But this notion of God doesn't sit well with me, and I know it doesn't sit well with many of you, because the being God with a human-like heart becomes capable of being both loving and heartless, just like us. It is exactly because of this that I believe God is not and cannot be a noun, but needs to be a verb, a pervasive presence, an eternal spirit that is at the center of all that is, and still more. Richard Rohr, in his book, The Naked Now, says, God is the one whose center is everywhere, whose center is everywhere, and whose circumference is nowhere. I love that image. For me, this means that the heart of God, the center, is in each one of us, in every living thing, and in all of creation, and also beyond everything that we understand. Bruce Sanguin talks about the heart of God as the love, the wisdom that is living all things, moving all things, the life within life itself. This way of imagining the God presence requires each of us to finally give up any idea that we can completely define, absolutely know, or effectively describe who or what God is. And instead, simply allow ourselves to live in that experience, or as some might say, let go and let God. The prophet Jeremiah and the psalmist in our readings this morning seem to get this sense of God, that is presence beyond form, beyond being, even though they lived in a time when people believed that the earth was flat, that the sun moved through the sky from east to west, and that there was a God, some kind of a figure in the heavens above. Despite that worldview and that theological view, which is, of course, a human creation, the prophet and the psalmist both intuited, somewhere deep in their being, they intuited that their own souls sing a very different song, a bigger song. Their deeper self, beneath what many call the monkey mind that we all have, that is our thoughts and our feelings, that likes order and likes to categorize and likes to perpetuate our thoughts and feelings. The deeper self beneath that experienced, in the psalmist and in Jeremiah, experienced the God presence alive, knowable, and yet indescribable. But the experience of the divine within them, of this heart of God within them, that life spirit causes Jeremiah to say, I will write it on their hearts, and no longer shall they teach one another, or say to one another, know God, for they shall know me, for I will dwell in their hearts. And the psalmist to say, you have placed your truth in my inner being, therefore teach me the wisdom of the heart. This is as close as they could come to explaining the experience of the God presence in their lives and in their world. Richard Rohr says that this revelation of the God presence, the heart of God within us, when we experience it, is even more real than our thoughts and our feelings, and utterly impossible to explain to another. The presence, the heart of God just is. All our stories, all our words can never define or explain the God presence, that spirit that is alive everywhere, that life force that is in everything all of the time. All that our stories and our words can do is to point somehow a little bit towards that which we already know deep in our hearts. The story of Jacob and David that I shared with the children this morning is one of these stories that I believe points us towards the God presence that we already know, that we already experience. David and Jacob were caught in the paradigm. They were caught in the belief that God was separate from them. A God to be obeyed and a God to be thanked in order for life to be good. They go through the story the way they go through life, not really engaging the Spirit of God in real terms, but in their infantile state, choosing to wait for God to act in their lives. So Jacob does what he believes God expects him to do, and David believes God expects his thanks for the blessing of bread. It takes the rabbi to open their eyes to a new reality of God, and more importantly, the need for each of them to discover who they are in the deeper part of their own humanness. That part that is behind and beneath our regular thoughts and feelings. David and Jacob become transformed by the very heart of God within them. A love and a wisdom that is the Spirit of God living in and through them. Bruce Sanguin says in two of his books, The Advance of Love and in Darwin, Divinity and the Dance of the Cosmos, that we are the first species, us humankind, are the first species to know love, to know wisdom, to even know there is a universe. Human consciousness is a great gift as we come to understand that we are more than our thoughts and feelings. We are all in possession of the very heart of God. This awesome gift of consciousness, what the writer of Genesis would call the tree of life. The writer of Genesis got this. That also calls us to great responsibility. This alluring Spirit of God is inviting us into full communion with our deeper self, into full communion with each other. Not just each other here, but each other as family and friend and stranger and enemy. And into full communion with all of this wondrous creation. Too often, I fear, I find myself asleep like Jacob, going through the motions of life, but not really living from the heart of God in me, that place of great love and wisdom. Many other times I find myself like David, waiting for something to happen, something to change, rather than opening to the God presence within me, to that heart of God within me, to find the courage to lean into others for what is needed. I want to close with a few more words from Richard Rohr. These are from the closing chapter of The Naked Now. This after I have spent many minutes saying that words can't actually explain any of this. And yet, I think these words are important, because I believe it is essential to the quality of our own life and for humanity as a whole to come to see that there is a part of the God presence, the Spirit, the life force, whatever you want to call that. It is part of us, within each of us, calling us to a greater life within our own life. And so Rohr says, the enormous breakthrough is that when you honor and accept the divine, the heart of God within you, you cannot help but see it in everyone else too. And you know it is just as undeserved and unmerited as it is in you. That is why you stop judging. And that is how you start loving unconditionally. And without asking whether someone is worthy or not. May we, each of us, open to the presence of the divine within us and in each other. That is the very heart of God.